This is the Decision Point with Anand Nanduri. Anand, we got a lot to talk about. The over-unders, the win totals have been out for a while. We're going to look at some NFL teams that we think are going to underperform. Some are going to overperform. We're going to look at some schedules. What does that mean for fantasy football? What does that mean for certain running backs, certain receivers, certain quarterbacks? There's been some news. We've got some speeders out there. Some of them were speeding last year, and now they have to pay the price. Others are recently speeding often, and so it's interesting and fun to talk about that. How long will Shedeur Sanders be an NFL player? Like, that is a question now. Like, what are you doing? What are the Browns doing? We're gonna keep monitoring some of these teams that are in rebuild mode and figure out, are there some teams that maybe are going to be switching into rebuild mode soon? Are there some teams that thought they rebuilt well and now it's a false start? So there's a lot to talk about today. Let's get started with, just let's talk about the Chiefs. The Chiefs are interesting. They are always near the top of the league. Every year they seem to beat their Vegas over-under win total. This year, they have some unique challenges. They're getting older, not just Travis Kelce. A lot of turnover on the offensive line, some turnover on the defense getting older. At some point, they're not going to be able to win 14 games. And the over-under for their win total this year is 11.5. And if you go over, you actually get plus money. It's plus 100. I've been burned most years saying, hey, it's going to be very difficult for the Chiefs, even with Mahomes. It's going to be very tough for them to, be at the top of the league again in total wins. And then there they go. Last year they did it to me again. So should I go back to this well and be like, okay, Chiefs actually aren't going to be as dominant but that's good. For fantasy, that's good. Right? The problem with the Chiefs last year is that they were too good. They were too dominant. They were in too many games where they were sitting on a lead, and there was no incentive to throw in the second half. You're looking for what teams will have an incentive to throw in the second half, and that's where you get these big shootouts and these big fantasy performances. Joe Burrow, right? Yeah. Why is that, yes, Joe Burrow's talent is near the top of the league, but it also matters a lot that he has the worst secondary in the league. So it's no surprise that he leads the league in every raw passing category with the worst secondary. And it's a problem that Patrick Mahomes is a good secondary. So how do you see things playing out in Kansas City? Because there's a lot of weapons there. If they can unlock this offense, if they can crank the pass volume up, there's a lot of fantasy points to be scored here.
Yeah, I mean, I think of the Mahomes iterations of Chiefs teams, this one is the first one where you're projecting more than you'd like to see that 13-14 win ceiling that we've seen from them for years and years and years. And they've been consistently hitting their ceiling, which, outside of Brady's Pats, we haven't really seen a team do consistently over a long stretch of time. Like, it's very rare that you get a team that is not only achieving to their statistical performances that the Chiefs have been, you've got the wins every year, and then they go deep into the postseason every year. This isn't a team that's blowing up the stat sheet every year and then they're getting bounced in round one of the playoffs. I mean, they're making Super Bowl runs almost every year, which sounds ridiculous to say, but it's what they're doing. Now, this is, to me, a unique and different challenge because for the first time, they've had back-to-back years where you can say that their offensive line may have gotten significantly worse. Josh Simmons from Ohio State's going to have to play left tackle for them. That is a rookie. He's an awesome football player, but he had surgery in October. How quickly will he get back to being what he was? And then what he was is probably not ready to take on AFC West edge rushers from day one. That's Max Crosby. That's not a Penn State edge rusher, as great as they are. I mean, you've got to deal with these dudes from day one if you're going to play that role for KC. And so I think that the tough part when you look at kind of how KC's O-line fits together, Creed Humphrey's potentially, if not the best center in the league, and one of the two best centers in the league. And then you've got, Trey Smith playing more than likely playing right guard. And then, left guard, right tackle, especially Jawan Taylor. That's where my concern here is. I don't have concerns about Rashee Rice or Hollywood Brown or even a potential decline of Travis Kelce, because they've used Noah Gray rather well in situations where Travis hasn't really performed that well. My concern is, are they going to be able to get enough from their run game because of this O-line? And are they going to be able to give Pat enough time because of this O-line to really get them to where they want to go? We have two peak evidences of this in Mahomes' career. He's lost games before, but there are really only two times where he's looked thoroughly outclassed on a football field. The first one was the most recent game they played against the Eagles, where Philly's D-line would just beat the shit out of their O-line, and game was over from the word go. Same thing happened against Tampa when they played a couple years ago in the Super Bowl as well. So it may not be that in the regular season these deficiencies get shown in the way that they do in the postseason when you're playing good team after good team that are basically all plotting to take your crown, especially in the AFC. I think that the problems for the Chiefs are not that the defense is aging or that Kelce is aging. I think the biggest problem is that you've got to find a way to keep 15 upright, and this is back-to-back years where I think that their O-line has gotten worse.
What about the defense?
The defense for me, I think, is going to continue to be a strength. They've saved the offense multiple times. I mean, what we don't talk about for a lot of these teams that make these runs is at some point your defense is going to have to win a game for you, especially in the postseason. You're not just going to score 45 on everybody. That's not the way the game works. That's not the way game flow works. And barring, some kind of 2011 Aaron Rodgers-esque run, which he's fully capable of, I'm not saying he's not. But barring, quarterback playing perfect, your defense is going to have to win you some games, and they've done that for them. It's just when you deal with an offense like Philly has, which, again, now everybody's going to try and rip off what they did. Running backs are going to become more valuable. People are going to start reinvesting in their D-lines, which they should have been doing anyway. You're starting to see the effects of, okay, it was KC forever. Now we're going to start chasing what Philly's doing. And I think that the biggest problem for KC is as much as you love their O-line, as much as I don't love their O-line, it's really the depth that's going to become a problem, because expecting all five of your linemen to make it through a 17-game season is probably unrealistic. And then the question becomes, if that's your starting O-line, what do you got behind them?
Well, they drafted the right positions. They drafted left tackle, right?
Yeah.
They drafted the cornerstone left tackle in Josh Simmons. That he was even there at the end of the first round was a gift. And then what do? They go right back to defense. They know that they are aging Chris Jones, aging along the defensive line, so they add Omar Norman Lott at the end of the second round, and then they trade back up into the early third round, and then they draft an edge rusher, Ashton Gillott, right? Is it Gillotti or Gillott?
Gillotti.
Right. So it's Gillotti.
Yeah.
And he's athletic. Look at his workout metrics from Louisville. So they're going with a tried and true tactic, which is, hey, we've been investing in the skill guys for many years. We're going to the point of attack. We lost in the Super Bowl. No more getting cute. We're going right back, investing in the point of attack. Offensive line, defensive line, defensive line. Pretty smart.
Yeah,
pretty smart.
I think
so you can't really ever count them out. How are they going to win games? They're going to win games the same way they did last year, right? They're going to have to run. They're going to have to run the ball. They can't. They're going to have to try to limit how many dropbacks Patrick Mahomes is exposed to, and to me, that makes it very difficult to invest in both Rashee Rice and Xavier Worthy at their ADP. I was talking to Pete Nova on the Mind of Mansion show. And time again, he's like, well, Look at these 2 wide receivers. Look at these 2 wide receivers in Seattle. I'm like, well, the Seattle offense is going to be, this is a ground and pound offense. And so it doesn't make as much logical sense to be overexposed to whoever the number 1 wide receiver is, especially if that number 1 wide receiver is going to carry like a top 40 ADP price tag in best ball. I would rather have Cooper Kupp. I know Cooper Kupp is one of, if not the most injury-prone wide receiver in the NFL. But at cost, given that he has a similar skill set to Jackson Smith and Jigba, and they're similar players actually when they're both healthy, I'll take the huge discount I'm getting on Cooper Kupp. And when I go down the board now, look at these teams that are not going to be prolific offenses. The case to pay up, especially for their wide receivers, is it's too much. Certainly, this idea that you could stack Mahomes with Worthy and Rice in best ball, it's a very thin case, given the situation that when you take a step back and say, how is this team going to win games? What is their personnel? What do you think they're going to do from play to play? This is not going to be hey, we're going to drop back and we're going to air it out type of team. They know they can't do that. They don't have the personnel to do that. The offensive line is in transition. If you're going to invest in a single player on this offense, probably Pacheco, right? Because that's if you have a young or in transition offensive line, the best way to protect is to just run the ball. And so Pacheco, his ADP, that's nice, right? You can get on Fast Draft in the Flex 4 game. By the way, you could use code Anand. Use code Anand for a $50 deposit match. You draft any 6 guys. The top 4 enter your lineup every week. And Pacheco is oftentimes available in the 6th round. Rashee Rice is a nice option. But oftentimes, you're better off drafting a running back in that format than going with Rashee Rice. And I have no idea what people, knowing Rashee Rice is going to play the full season, no idea what people are thinking drafting Xavier Worthy. This is just, hey, I saw this guy erupt as a young player in big games last year after he was the number 1 pick and he broke the combine. And I'm not going to think about everything else, all the other forces that are going to be suppressing his production this year. So one of the ADPs that makes the least sense to me in the context that we've just laid out is Xavier Worthy.
Yeah, I don't understand. Rice has been a discount in the offseason because of some of the off-field stuff that we were concerned might drag into this season. It seems like it's going to be next season. So if he's going to play all 17 games, his ADP doesn't make sense at all. And then from there, you kind of look at one thing that KC does better than almost anyone is they replenish that DB room in rounds 4, 5, 6, and 7 about as well as anybody in the league does. They keep finding starting DBs late in round 3 that are productive players for them that they let go somewhere else, and then they just draft and replace another one. We talked about how Pittsburgh used to be great at doing this with wide receivers. There are teams that are, just very great at drafting a certain spot, and it seems like Spags and his team over in Kansas City have done an excellent job drafting DBs. And so anytime that you have that kind of a lock on a certain position, it allows you to take positions elsewhere and know that, hey, if we draft 2 of these guys, at least one of them is going to work out based on, what we look for and what we teach these guys throughout their rookie and sophomore seasons. And by year 3, these are super productive, Super Bowl influencing players. And I think, especially when you look at what they're going to have to do to beat, Baltimore, to beat Buffalo, because they kind of seem to be the 2 teams in the AFC best position to take them down. I think when you look at those 2 specifically, the more time that you can take the ball out of a Josh Allen or a Lamar Jackson's hands, the more chance you have to give every Mahomes drop back more leverage. And they've done a fantastic job of shortening games against those 2. And it's why they keep beating them over and over again. I think that there are going to be games where the offense goes off. It's not going to be 50 week after week like it was in 2018. I just don't see that being their offense anymore.
I mean, look at Rashee Rice. I mean, don't count week 4. Look at Rashee Rice's game log. The guy was averaging 22 fantasy points per game. Absolutely incredible. But now he's coming back. He's fully active, right? Like ready to go, ready to rock.
Yeah,
fully active and quote unquote good to go for training camp. But still, he's still recovering from a major lower body injury. Okay, so we go to the injury section on PlayerProfiler.com. Torn LCL. Okay, cost him the whole season. He's not going to be 100% to start the season. They're going to work him back in. He's not going to start the year on the pop. This is not a Brandon Ayuk situation. But to think that he's going to be putting up 23 fantasy points in week 1, especially with Xavier Worthy on the team in his second year, and given that that's just not how they're going to win games this year. The case for Rashee Rice is better than the case for Xavier Worthy at ADP, but if I'm drafting a Chief, I'm going to go Pacheco. I'm going to go Travis Kelce. Travis Kelce's ADP, now that it's much closer to a David Njoku, much closer to an Evan Ingram than it is Brock Bowers. He's now in a completely different ADP tier. That, to me, is value. That's where you should be shopping. Don't pay up for players on teams that we don't think are going to score a lot of points. I mean, that is that is the theme of this month of shows that I've been doing. And Kansas City is a good example of that. When we look at the win totals across the league, what are some other win totals that jump out at you?
Yeah, I think one of the really strange ones is it's the Giants at 5.5. Have you looked at this schedule yet?
The Giants' schedule is the comical schedule of my lifetime. And again, this is the anti-Cam Scatterboo case. That if you're looking to fade Scatterboo, the reason is the schedule. Because he is a running back, and he is a big back. Yes, he has soft hands, but this is not a pure satellite back. This is not a Theo Riddick type player. This is not a guy that's going to do most of his damage in the passing game. No. This is not a third down back. That's not what Cam Scatterboo's been sold to be. Cam Scatterboo, he's been sold as an every down all-purpose guy. An every down all-purpose guy needs touchdown equity in order to deliver. You need to be in positions where there's going to be positive game script and the team is going to be leaning on the run in the second half, like Kansas City will be with Pacheco. I'm looking at this schedule. Washington, Dallas, Kansas City, Los Angeles. I mean, it's hard to believe. It's hard to believe. And the funny thing about this schedule is the way the NFL screwed the Giants with who they're playing at home versus who they're playing on the road. It is one of the great, hilarious schedule assignments that I've ever seen where, hey, we're going to have you guys open at Washington and at Dallas, and you're going to be big-time dogs in your division. And so you're probably going to be starting the year 0-4, because, okay, you start 2 games on the road, unfair, right? And then your home games, what are your home games? You have some home games, not home games you can win, not really. You have Kansas City at home, and then you have the Chargers at home, back to back. I mean, this is just I don't think they did this on purpose. Just one of those things where, hey, they put the schedule in the machine, and this is what it spit out. They don't do this by hand on every team. And it's like a Rubik's Cube to try to figure this all out. And once it's done and locked, it's locked. You're not going to go back and, like, if you make one tweak and say, no, they can't play this team, they got to play New Orleans earlier in the year because it's not fair, well, then that would change everything else. And then there'd be these cascading effects with other schedules. And you can't do that. You just have to deal with it. There's one game on the schedule they're going to be favored to win, and that's by like 1.5 points at New Orleans, week 5. They could easily lose that game. So you're telling me all the teams that I'm supposed to beat or be competitive with, I have to play on the road, and then teams that I'm crushed by, where there's a huge talent disparity, I get all those teams at home. So, I mean, the way that you get to your win total and you exceed your win total, and their win total, by the way, is 5.5. The way you exceed it is by winning a bunch of home games, some home games that maybe you didn't deserve to win or you weren't projected to win, but you steal some home games. They can steal, like I can see them stealing a home game against Green Bay. That's week 11. And, you know, you never know. Like Dallas, week 18, maybe Dallas is out of it by then, and that's just that becomes like a shit show. Who knows what's going to happen game. Other than that, every other matchup that is at all friendly, at Chicago, at New England, at Las Vegas, all road games, it's comical.
It's one of the most brutal schedules I've ever seen. And the thing, it's not like this team totally lacks talent. It's just, my God, you're either starting the shell of Russell Wilson, the shell of Jameis Winston, or a rookie quarterback in Jackson Dart. And then from there, you're talking about, 6 or 7 teams that have among the 10 best Super Bowl odds for them. They've got to play them all. And then on top of all of that, I mean, the strength of this team is the defensive line. I don't know that they're going to be able to score enough points. Like,
no, it doesn't matter. It's not going to matter. That's the thing. Their strength is nullified by the schedule. A great defensive line is nice when you're up and you're leading, and then your front seven is making it difficult for the other team to come back. Then you're in the face of the quarterback. You're forcing turnovers, and you are squashing comeback attempts. That's what the Chiefs have been so good at, squashing comeback attempts. Well, you don't have to worry. That's not the issue. Is how the hell are we going to score any points? This schedule, by the way, is great for Malik Neighbors.
Oh, yeah.
This is a very Malik Neighbors friendly schedule. If you needed another reason to draft Malik Neighbors, and I'm drafting Malik Neighbors, man. I'm drafting Malik Neighbors ahead of all these other receivers that have target competition, whether it be Brian Thomas, whether it be Puka Nacua. I would much rather have Malik Neighbors just because there's going to be a radar lock on him. And the other thing about the schedule, which is nice for fantasy, is that it guarantees Russell Wilson will be benched. Russell Wilson cannot survive the schedule. He can't survive. I think they'll start 0-4 most likely, and then there's going to be all these calls to bench Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson could be benched. It's conceivable by week 5, and then they bring in either Winston or Dart. I think it's conceivable they bring in Dart and say, hey, we're going to try to give him an easy game against New Orleans, or maybe a home game against San Francisco, week 9. Like something the problem is there's nothing on this schedule that would be comfortable for Dart. There's not a single game. Either it's a road game against a team that is spunky. New England is spunky. Las Vegas is spunky, right? I think the home game against Green Bay would make some sense to start Dart, to put Dart in there. But I think if Dart's not ready, then it's going to be Winston. So we could see Wilson. We could see this. This could be the cadence of quarterback play. We could see a block of Wilson, then a block of Winston, then a block of Dart, and then Dart either gets hurt or is struggling, and they pull him for his own good, and then they finish out the season, last few games of the year, with Winston.
You could sell me based on, so I think that's very likely. I don't think that Wilson finishes the season, whether because of injury or just because he's not good enough.
No, you can't.
I think
You cannot draft. Russell Wilson is a wasted pick in every format.
Yeah, I don't see.
If you have him in Dynasty, you can't start the season because it's just it's a tick 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 tick. Even in superflex and 2 QB leagues, you're not going to get any trade value for him around the trade deadline. He's going to be benched by then.
And you can sell me.
You got to get whatever you can get in Dynasty. If you happen to have Russell Wilson in 2 QB and superflex, just
sell him right now.
Get something. Get something for him now. Get something, and do not draft him in these formats. Do not waste like a deep bench pick. Some people might think, "Oh my God, a third or a fourth quarterback. I got to get Russell Wilson or a third quarterback in these deep best ball." No. Russell Wilson is undraftable. He's untouchable. He should never be touched. I don't care if he's the starter. This schedule tells me he is going to take the blame for their 0-5, 0-6. I mean, if New Orleans beats them, then they're looking at Philadelphia at home. Then they have to go on the road to Denver. Then they have Philly again, but this time it's on the road. So now they're 0-8. It's just these things are going to compound. Dayball's not going to survive. This could also be the thing that gets Joel Shane. Is it Joel Shane? We've been talking about him for years, ever since the infamous Hard Knocks appearance, where he didn't really even have a take on Neighbors versus Marvin Harrison versus Odunze, and there was all this fake stuff up on the whiteboard, and then he gaslit his top equity holder, whose family has been running the franchise since its inception. He still somehow has a job. Joe Shane. So this could be, we could see the full house cleaning. We could see the complete and utter dismantling of the front office, the coaching staff, where everybody, janitorial service, everybody goes, and they get the number 1 pick.
Yeah. To me, I think one of the most interesting markets, that especially as we're talking about odds for things, most regular season receiving yards, they've got Malik Neighbors at 13-1, and you could sell me on that he will finish wide receiver 1 overall in fantasy out of necessity. Out of Jameis is our quarterback and he's throwing it 60 yards down the field, and we only have one guy that can actually go get that ball. I would not be shocked if Malik Neighbors finishes wide receiver 1 overall this year. I think that's well in his range of outcomes.
He has the talent. Okay. He now has the schedule. He has all the negative game script you could ever want. They have the quarterback. They have the number 1 overall wide receiver quarterback that you need in Jameis Winston. And again, I think it's going to be multiple stints. I think we're talking about, like I said, a 4-game stint here and then a 4-game stint there. They're not going to commit to Winston. They're going to try to, have him bridge, and then it's not going to work out, or there's going to be some kind of injury. These guys, again, rookie quarterbacks, they get injured at a higher rate because they don't understand the speed and the timing. Their intuition needs to catch up. It takes a couple years for their intuition to fully catch up. So they're a little more vulnerable to NFL defenders. And so they take more hits, more shoulder injuries. You've seen this, right? High ankle sprains, rookie quarterbacks. I mean, it's what happens. So, broken fingers, like they hit helmets. They just the awareness, the situational awareness just isn't quite the same. So my prediction is 4 to 6 games from Wilson. It could be that Wilson loses that game at New Orleans, and that's the straw. That could be the straw. You might say, well, that's a game that is good to have on the schedule because that's the game that could save him. But no, that's actually the game that could ruin him.
Yeah,
And
if you
then
don't beat
they,
New Orleans at
I
New
think they
Orleans.
bring in Dart at that point, and then they have to turn to Winston. And then they have to bring back Dart, and they bring back Winston, or they bring in Winston initially. Then they're like, okay, we're finally ready to roll out Dart, and then Dart flames out, and then it's back to Winston. That's my prediction.
Any of those in whatever order are probably more likely than not. I don't see you getting to week 10 and Russell Wilson is still the quarterback. Like, something would have to drastically change, in my opinion, because at some point Dable's coaching for his job. And if Russell Wilson is 1-9 or 0-10 at that point, how long do you wait
Daboll's
to save your own
gone.
ass? Yeah, I mean,
Daboll's
how long do you
gone.
wait?
The
to
beauty is, if I have if I had the dream NFL job, if I were a general manager at the end of the year, it's conceivable that you could have Mike Tomlin as your head coach on the market and Brian Daboll as your OC on the market.
Yeah.
That would be the dream scenario. If you were a new GM or you were trying to rebuild and you actually had the opportunity, because I think Daboll's a good offensive coordinator, and I think Mike Tomlin's a hell of a head coach. Both of them are going to end up becoming available just because the franchises are circling the drain and the fan bases have turned against them. I was in Pittsburgh. They already have Fire Tomlin shirts available. I was in the market, the market where they have all the cheap shirts, and they're trying to sell their Russell Wilson Steelers shirts and jerseys for $3. They
Still
already have Fire Tomlin T-shirts. It's already a thing. And I was talking to someone. I was trying to encourage someone. They're despondent. This fan base. I've never seen them like this. They're always so happy-go-lucky. They're always finding a way to make the playoffs, even when they don't deserve it, with a negative point differential. Always so happy-go-lucky. These goddamn Steelers fans. And this was the first time they were like, oh my God, Aaron Rodgers, this is hell. I'm in hell. Tomlin sucks. Everything sucks. And I'm like, but you get Caleb Johnson. Caleb Johnson's exciting, right? This is a Steeler, running back. I mean, I couldn't find his jersey. Couldn't find in these markets. Couldn't find a jersey. You could fringe players, right? Freiermuth and Calvin Austin and Jalen Warren, but you couldn't find. I was like, wait. So let me get this straight. If he's a second-round pick, you'll have the jersey. If he's a third-round pick, he's a nobody. Is that how you guys do this? Because this guy's really, really good, and that's the jersey that I would think would be selling. Would be the Caleb Johnson jersey, but no, they don't even have it available because they're all so depressed and ready to move on from Tomlin, ready to tank. This is a fan base that would embrace a good tank. They would.
The thing about the Giants is they've already seen the bottom, man. Like they've seen about as bad as it gets. The Jets have too. It's funny that they share a building because the last few years, both franchises have just.
Yeah.
And now we're looking at both of them. And it's funny because this Giants team does remind me very much of the early Robert Saleh Jets, where they had a ridiculous D line and the rest of the roster is, oh shit, what are we going to do? That's where they are right now. What's up, Pete?
Pete Nova in the chat. Yes. It's a weird situation, man. So that'll be who gets fired first, Daboll or Tomlin. I'm going to go Daboll. Based on the schedule, we're going to go Daboll. But they deserve better. Both those guys deserve better. I think we can say that. Question in the chat, which is very interesting, very relevant.
Ooh.
Is Puka Nacua or Calvin Ridley at cost? And I much prefer Calvin Ridley at cost. In best ball, would have a lot more Calvin Ridley than Puka Nacua. I'm all in on Devontae Adams. So again, that's another one of those teams where I'm going with the veteran receiver of the receiver duo at a less expensive, even though there's very little talent disparity. But fading the sexy young guy in favor of the proven veteran. With the Rams, they have sort of the opposite situation to the Giants, where their schedule is really soft. Really soft. And while the difficult schedule helps the Giants, Malik Neighbors, it hurts Scattaboo, helps Neighbors. With the Rams, I mean, it helps their running game. It helps Kyron Williams, and it potentially if it's Jarquez Hunter, but Kyron Williams for now. And it hurts the receivers. They're just not going to be in as many shootouts when it's at Tennessee, and then you've got Indy at home, and then you've got Baltimore, which is just going to be a difficult game. There's no guarantee there's going to be many points scored in that game at all. Then you've got New Orleans at home, so you've got Carolina on the schedule. When you cross against both the AFC South and the NFC South, that exposes you to a lot of bad teams where, okay, now I have a home game against Tennessee. Now I have a home game against Indianapolis. Suddenly you've got a bunch of these games where you're up 10 in the second half and you just don't need to throw the ball as much. So I think this idea that the McVay Rams offense can easily support two alpha receivers, it's flawed. The idea that you could just pick Puka in the first round knowing the target share that Devontae Adams is going to command, it's predicated on it being a very pass-first, up-tempo, high-volume offense. And when I look at this schedule and I see them going to Carolina, it's like, okay, I don't see it. I don't see it. They could be up 10 against Atlanta. They could be up 10. I mean, there's a lot of these games where I see, okay, we've certainly... We've got they're going to have to throw the ball to win against Baltimore and against Philly, but you could be looking at a Patrick Mahomes situation against Philly where, yeah, he knows he has to throw, but he can't because it's now you're against these ferocious front sevens or these soft matchups where you're going to be running the ball. There's a lot of that on this Rams schedule, and it's not good for the receivers.
I think one of them is going to disappoint at ADP. Like I think that it's almost inevitable that one of Adams or Nakua is not necessarily is going to bust, but is going to be someone that, knowing what you know at the end of the season, you'd have drafted 2 rounds later, maybe 3 rounds later. And especially where they're going, the cost to draft Nakua, it's again, we talk about this all the time in terms of at real NFL team building, but it's true in fantasy too. The opportunity cost to draft Nakua where he's going right now is crazy, especially because you could see a scenario where him and Adams both end up like 1,100-yard receivers. Kyron Williams steals all the touchdowns. Like there are scenarios where they both, perform numbers wise pretty well, but neither of them ends up a wide receiver 1. Like you could end up with 2 high-end 2s here. And I love Puka. And I think Devontae Adams has been wildly underrated since he left Green Bay. But what we're looking at here is a situation where you have a quarterback that is at the very end of his career. He wants to go win. The way forward is not for him to throw for 4,500 yards and 40 touchdowns anymore. It just doesn't make sense. And so if you're putting all of this back together, we do this from time to time on this show. Matt, I know you do this on other shows too. If the ADPs of those two are as high as they are, and Matthew Stafford is going as QB 23, someone is very wrong. Like there's no way that all 3 of those things can happen. I don't see a world where Matthew Stafford finishes as QB 23, Puka Nacua finishes as a top 5 receiver, and Adams is in the top 15 to 20. There's not enough there. It doesn't make sense. And especially where
with
Kyron
a different
is
schedule, maybe.
Yeah.
But not against this schedule, not against all the, like Detroit, Baltimore, Philadelphia. In theory, these are shootouts, but they very easily could just be blowouts where Philly and Detroit just crush the Rams, and the Rams just can't get any offense going at all because those front sevens are so ferocious. And then these are lower scoring games in a lot of these other weeks in the schedule.
Yeah, I mean they're both sides of it, right? The argument for both Nakua and Adams at ADP is basically Stafford will throw a couple of terrible interceptions in a game that he shouldn't against someone that's awful, and he will single-handedly try to bring them back in that game. Now that works on a one-game sample size, but over a full season, you can't rely on that. There are going to be weeks where both Puka and Adams finish as wide receiver ones, but you're counting on that consistently somewhat, or at least one of them almost every week, if you're betting that both of them end up in that top 15 to 20. And we see this happen from time to time. We see it with T. Higgins all the time. We draft him in round 3, round 4, and Jamar Chase goes way over the top and he's the one that outperforms, or, he gets hurt and Higgins is the one that outperforms ADP. It's just super unlikely that the Rams are going to throw enough for both of those ADPs to be right and Stafford's to be right. And I think that, realistically speaking, I think if you're going to bet on one or the other at ADP, it's safer to bet on Adams. But the real bet here is Kyron Williams and Jarquez Hunter.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. And when you look at who did the Rams draft, right? So who did they bring in? So when you look at the Rams draft, they traded out, right? They traded out of the first round, so they didn't even have a first round pick because they traded with the Falcons. The Falcons traded up to get Pierce, which was just an atrocious deal, and then they used that pick on a tight end on Terrence Ferguson. So the good news is that in the first 2 rounds, the Rams did not invest in the defense at all. But what does that tell you? Does that tell you maybe that their defense is better than advertised? Right? That yes, they have a lot of picks, but they did invest in Josiah Stewart, the edge rusher from Michigan, in the 3rd round. So they did eventually look to improve the defense. If the defense continues to improve with this schedule, I hate it. I really hate it. And Puka Nacua, you're making the decision to draft either Puka Nacua or Ashton Genty or Malik Neighbors. It's an easy decision.
Yeah,
Neighbors is easy. It's an easy decision to go Neighbors. It does. I don't like it, man. I don't like it. And it's just think about even like a Garrett Wilson. Think about a Drake London. Think about what Drake London have to do to outperform Puka. They're gonna have a more targets. So now Puka's gonna have to be that much more efficient than some really good receivers that are available 15 picks later.
Yeah, I think part of it is you add in Ferguson now. That's another guy that will get legitimate targets. You add Adams, who's going to get a lot more targets than, DeMarcus Robinson and Tutu Atwell ever were going to, especially when Kupp was hurt. But the real question here is, if the Rams are going to achieve to their peak, what does that team look like? And it looks like a lot like, when in 2018, when Gurley was slashing all the way basically through the entire regular season, almost to an MVP. Everybody talks about how McVay's offense brings out the best in a wide receiver one and how Stafford at times has been underrated as a quarterback. Nobody really talks about how much it does for the running backs in that system and how free their yardage becomes if they hit those play action shots early in a game, or if it is Nacua or Kupp at the time or Adams this year getting, 3-4 easy catches. It makes their life so much easier. And I know they don't want Matthew throwing 45 times a game. So it's a pretty easy sell at cost for Nacua. But I think that if you think that Nacua at where he's going is worth pushing the draft button on, I question why you are not drafting Matthew Stafford. Or if you just think Adams is totally washed, which if that's what you think, you're just wrong.
Stafford's a great pick. Stafford's good. This is the year. There's never been a better year. There's never been a better year to play late-round quarterback, especially in 2QB and Superflex leagues. Especially in 2QB and Superflex league. And single quarterback last year with Jaden Daniels, it's hard to beat Jaden Daniels, the single quarterback last year. You're not going to get better than that. But in Superflex and 2QB, there's just so many options available where you can draft Michael Penix, you can draft Purdy. There's so many guys you can draft and not invest the early round capital at the quarterback position, even in 2QB and Superflex formats, Dynasty, seasonal leagues, all of it. I'm not doing it, man. I'm not doing it. I want the young superstars in all those formats. And then a third quarterback that you can draft, a great third quarterback option is Justin Fields. And talked about that with Pete Nova yesterday. You look at the Jets' schedule. This is the real difference between the Jets and the Giants. The over-under on the Jets is similar to the Giants, but the schedule is so much better. See, their home games are very winnable. So the easier matchups, a lot of them are at home. Week 1, Pittsburgh at home. Week 7, Carolina at home. And then at Miami, very winnable. Cleveland, week 10, at home. They go at New Orleans, very winnable, especially when you have a quarterback that is going to make big plays, and is a dynamic threat on third down. You can steal some wins with a mobile quarterback like Justin Fields. Justin Fields is the perfect player for this team. And especially for those that are looking to, profit in the win total game, look at the win totals for the Jets. I mean, it's down near the bottom, 5.5, right? So the Jets, the difference is it's minus 155. So if you want to go over 5.5, there's a serious vig where you go over 5.5, you actually get plus 120 on the Giants. So the big vig is actually on the under 5.5 with the Giants, and that's because everyone has access to the schedule, and everyone can see how the hell this is going to play out. I still think the under on the Giants is the way to go. The over on the Jets is a smash, an absolute smash, because again, you can close your eyes and you can visualize how this is going to play out for the Jets. They're going to win a bunch of these games 2017 with Justin Fields running for 90 yards and them getting 2 touchdowns, one some random, defensive touchdown or special teams touchdown, or Braylon Allen from the 7-yard line touchdown, and then one from their superstar, a Garrett Wilson touchdown, a long screen pass touchdown, on a hurdle by Breece Hall, and then a couple field goals, and they win 2017.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't think the offense is not exciting by any means in terms of, like the offense as it's built, but the pieces are interesting. Garrett Wilson's a fun one. Justin Fields individually is a fun one. Breece Hall's a fun one.
They're all fun. They're more than fun, though. They're going to crush fantasy because they're all they have. It's so consolidated down to just like it's like a pure fantasy drug. Like every time Justin Fields drops back, that's not going to be wasted with some random pass play to Jake Ferguson, right? It's not going to happen. It's going to be, this is going to Hall, this is going to Wilson. Now he's pulling it down and running himself. Hall, Wilson running himself. That's all you're going to get every play. And they're going to sustain drives because these guys are super playmakers. They can take what would be, an 8-yard run, turning into an 11-yard run, first down. Or, it's 3rd and 11, and Justin Fields scrambles, and he has a bunch of different options. He can go short, and Breece Hall makes a cut, and he gets a first down, or he can take it himself with a first down. You can see a lot. It's so easy to see how they're going to win a bunch of games, the Jets.
Yeah, I can see so many different scenarios where the Jets steal games from really good teams. And historically they have, whether it was the Rams a few years ago, they beat the Bills in the opener 2 years ago when Rodgers got hurt. I mean, every year they steal a couple, and this team is not as bad as, the offensive output in terms of points is going to suggest, because they're going to chew up yards and they're going to chew up a lot of clock because they're going to keep the ball on the ground a whole lot.
And look who they drafted in the first round. Membu, right? Anchor offensive linemen. That is exactly what you. I mean exactly. Protect Justin Fields, give him that extra second, and allow all the other offensive linemen to shift into easier run blocking positions. Open up bigger holes for Allen and Hall. My God, man. I mean, what a great pick. And that's a great pick for fantasy. That's the thing with that Membu pick. Great pick for fantasy. And then Mason Taylor, like that's not real target competition. That's like a long-term, you hope it works out. But it's not like a threat to Garrett Wilson or a threat even to Breece Hall or anybody. No. It's so great. And then what do they do in the third round? They go with a cornerback. Big deal, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
it's what they do, man. They love drafting corners. I don't know. I don't see a scenario where the Jets are just this unwatchable product that is awful. Like they have been that, but I don't see that being what they are this year. Justin Fields is going to inject an element of fun. Now, will that lead to a ton of wins? I don't know, but you only need to get to 6, and the defense is probably going to give you 3 on their own. It's incredibly tough to see a scenario where they're just unwatchable. The defense falls apart, and they look like the Giants. I don't see it. I think they're better than the Giants.
It's going to be a tale of 2 cities. It really is going to be a tale of one city with 2 teams. And Nate Bierce in the chat is just being super irrational, right? This is like just say no to superstitions, man. He says that I would draft Breece Hall except for my never draft Jets policy. And this is a different front office. This is a different coaching staff. This is a different team. It's a different quarterback. It's a different everything than we've seen in the past. This is not the Jets that we've seen. This is not Mark Sanchez. This is not Aaron Rodgers. This is not Zach Wilson. They have figured out a way to be competitive, even though they have like a bottom 10, talent profile in the NFL. They've found a way to be competitive. It's interesting. This is a very interesting team. Now, I don't agree with bringing in Justin Fields if you're trying to lose games. So if we were going to be a general manager, I don't think that Justin Fields is a good signing. I think that Jameis Winston's the best signing, and then you work your way down from there. If you're trying to lose games, because then you can make your fan base happy with lots of offense, but still have plenty of interceptions and losses. Justin Fields, there's a hard cap on what he can be, but he does put you in a position to win a lot of close games. And that's actually not what you want if you're trying to tank. But if you're a fan and you're just trying to win games and you're trying to have a fun season, or if you're in fantasy football and you want points and you want cheap points from late round quarterbacks and you want value on guys like Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson in the 3rd round of drafts, I mean, Flex 4, they're both available in the 3rd round. They're both smash picks. Like when I'm mock drafting in the Flex 4 game, Breece Hall, it's too easy. It's Breece Hall. It's basically, I have 3 choices. Breece Hall, Chase Brown, or Garrett Wilson. It's the running back on the best offense or Jets that I know are going to be getting just incredible opportunity shares. Garrett Wilson, already speculation he's going to lead the team, break records for targets, receptions. I mean, duh. I mean, that's like, you see these like beat writer hot takes and you're like, yeah, whatever, buddy. Yeah, okay, tell me another one. Okay, sure. Yeah, he's going to break Steve Largent's record. Okay, sure, whatever. This one I'm like, oh yeah, that's obvious. Yeah, easy.
When we talk about like auto smash picks at certain spots, like forever it was Tyler Lockett for me, where it was just, I cannot believe that you're giving me this player at this ADP every single year. And it's shifted. It's so funny to me now that guy is James Conner. I cannot believe every single year that people would just round 6, round 7. Here's James Conner, just free for you. Okay. I'll happily hit the draft button every single year. I'll take him this year too.
A lot of smart people are drafting a lot of James Conner this year. When I was looking at the over-unders, a couple jumped out at me in terms of because I like to take the unders. I'm not okay. Yeah, you like this team, great. Take the over, fine. Dolphins 8.5 to go over. The vig is up to plus 155. So you get a massive payoff if you think they're going to win 9 games because everybody knows they're not going to. If you let your offensive line crumble and you have a quarterback that needs protection more than any other, both for health and pocket awareness reasons, and the fact that his receivers like to get deep, for a lot of reasons, Tua is the first quarterback that you would want to invest in protecting in the NFL. And then for them to not protect him and put him in a very vulnerable situation, it's just, I think that this is where Kirk Cousins is going to end up. And, you know, that's, I mean, Kirk Cousins probably signs there at some point in October is my guess, because it's not going to take long for the losses to start piling up for the Dolphins. And for Mike McDaniel also. So I don't think Mike McDaniel's not going to survive the season. Tomlin's not going to survive. Dayball's not going to survive. I mean, put it in the chat. Anyone else, if you have other coaches that you don't think are going to survive, put it in the chat right now. And while you're at it, like the show. If you're listening to the podcast, share the show with a friend, please. That would go a long way. And the other thing you can do is if you're looking for a probability that players are going to break out, we crunch all the data with the Breakout Finder app. It's available in the App Store. And here's a little bit more information about it. Oh, the Breakout Finder is live. That's right. A lot of breakout models out there, but we started it all. The best and brightest minds coming up with the definitive breakout probabilities for running backs, wide receivers in this rookie class. It's $5 to download the wide receiver breakouts, the running back breakouts, but also proprietary stats available only on the Breakout Finder, including dynamic score for wide receivers, teammate score, level of competition. You can access the full stat database, plus many advanced metrics from Player Profiler, all there, right there on your phone, in the App Store, on Google Play, and that 2025 class is live. So, let's get into another team. A team that beyond, because there's not. Is there anything else to talk about with the Dolphins? There's not.
No, the only.
There's nothing. There's nothing to talk about.
Yeah, we can't forecast health, and
no, but
it's unlikely that all three of them finish the season. You know which three I'm talking about.
They've done Mike McDaniel no favors with the way they've built this team. He must be very frustrated with how this whole thing is played out. I mean,
if you could guarantee me that Tua, Waddle, Hill, Achane would all stay healthy, then you have a shot. Other than that, no. And do I think all 4 of them are staying healthy for 17 games? Fuck no.
Even if they're healthy, I don't think they don't have the horses there. They don't have the horses. I mean, you're going to have, I mean, we could have, if I could have McDaniel as my quarterback coach with Daboll as my offensive coordinator and Mike Tomlin as my head coach. I mean, if you're shopping for coaches, this offseason is going to be the best year to be shopping for coaches of all time. And it's gonna be something to watch, and how quick these coaches get fired when they get the hook will be fun to watch too. Just the way the schedules are set up, it's such a setup for some of these coaches to just get absolutely vaudevillian caned off the stage. Another team that I think is set up to fail this year has to be Green Bay. I mean, when I look at their schedule, they start off, again, they're like, oh, we'll give you some home games, Detroit and Washington. And then they go on the road to Cleveland, on the road to Dallas. The problem is that Cleveland road game is no guarantee. Just like that New York Giants road game is no guarantee because Green Bay's not that good. In fact, Jair Alexander just signed with Baltimore. So Baltimore knows things. Every time, whenever Baltimore signs your player, you're like, oh, shit, maybe we should have kept him.
Outside of wide receiver.
Well, that's the one. Right. Yes. But This is a very they again, home game against Carolina, week 9. They're at Pittsburgh. That's a tough. They have some games they could lose on the road and at home. I don't like it, man. I don't like it one bit.
The strangest part to me, I'll get to the Packers in a second. The strangest part to me is people assuming that the Panthers are going to suck. And
No.
Bryce, the second half of last year, was much better. Thielen is still performing somehow. I don't know how. And they went and grabbed T-Mac in the first round. Now they have a true number one. So that aside, because you brought up the Panthers, the Packers are in a weird spot. And we've never really had a guy like this in terms of Jordan Love, where he sat so long that you had to pay him off 1 year.
That's interesting. That's an interesting point.
We've never had a scenario where a player is so far into his contract, it's a first round pick, that the first time that he plays, he has basically had a full season where you get to evaluate him, but then you have to offer him top of the market QB money. And that's what happened with Jordan Love. My assumption here is, from watching what I've watched from him, I think in year 1, life was made easy for him by Matt LaFleur, which good on you as a QB coach, as an OC, as a head coach that's calling plays. That's what you want to do. In year 2, he was figured out to an extent, and he couldn't quite get away with some of the things that he got away with his rookie year. He was trying to test his boundaries a little bit. Now, we see this a lot in QBs. The difference is when you have a sophomore slump in your sophomore season, you're not getting paid $60 million a year. That's the difference.
That is a fascinating point, because this was a bad season, man. When you look at his advanced metrics on Player Profiler, we're talking about deep ball accuracy. We're talking about under pressure accuracy, all outside the top 15. The pressure, under pressure, he was below 50%.
Yeah.
Okay? Now, here's the biggest red flag of all. When you look at the fantasy points, he was, a mid QB2, like 16 plus fantasy points per game. But what was that driven by? The red zone completion percentage. He was top 5 in the league in red zone completion percentage, which is not a sticky stat. It's not an indicator. It just so happens that you completed a bunch of passes in the red zone, and then that led to a bunch of touchdowns, and that basically juiced up your fantasy production. But in the areas where it matters more, like how are you under pressure, how are you throwing deep, he was, bottom part of the league, if not outside the top 30 in some categories, like under pressure. And even the clean pocket accuracy was bad. Now, he is pushing the ball downfield. His yards per attempt, his air yards per attempt, top 5. So there is an adjustment you need to do there, because he is pushing the ball downfield more, so the completion percentage isn't going to be as high. But we're talking about a clean pocket accuracy rating of 6.3 on Player Profile, which is number 30 among qualified passers in the NFL. He's just not accurate enough to be a top quarterback in the league. He's not what they paid for. And this is a team that's going to have to wait a long time to cycle through Jordan Love, get a new quarterback in the building, build him up, develop him. It's all the more reason why you must see what these guys are as early as their rookie year, ideally. The Giants need to know what they have with Jackson Dart. The worst thing they could do is allow Jackson Dart to fool them with a small sample. You can't. You have to start expanding the sample immediately and let these players put stats on the board, put game tape up on the board, and show why they deserve a big contract. You can't. They got fooled with a small sample with Jordan Love, and now their team is in purgatory, and it's overrated. I can't believe their over-under win total is 9.5, and that's like even money. That's an even money win total. 9.5. It's whatever it is, minus 120. Like or minus 115. It's the standard payout at 9.5. When you have to face the Lions twice and the Vikings twice, and what we know is going to be improved Bears team, makes no sense. This schedule makes no sense. And if you happen to be like over on the Packers, or you're a Packers fan, and they start losing these games on the road to the Giants, for example, they start getting blown out by, let's say they could get blown out by the Bengals at home because Love can't take advantage of that Bengals secondary. The Bengals secondary, maybe they get some turnovers against Jordan Love. And next thing you know, it's a 28-10 home loss. Like, that's very possible. And then the wheels come off very quickly, and then everyone's like, "Wait, what do we have? We paid him. We have these mid-round picks coming. We're so far away from having a team that's any good." It's sort of like Pittsburgh. Like, I see them being in this post Ben Roethlisberger purgatory for many years to come.
The thing for me about Green Bay is I'm a lot more bullish on Jordan Love and what he can be, I think, than you are at this point. But a part of this is front office related. Get him a number one wide receiver, because right now the difference between what Purdy has with Kittle on 3rd and 6 and 7, right? I love Tucker Kraft. I think he's fucking awesome. Tucker Kraft is not George Kittle. He is not your get out of jail free card on 3rd and 7. Now, there are many, many, many different ways that you can help a young quarterback. And even though he's been in the league for 5 years now, Jordan Love is still learning. There's still stuff that he's cycling through because he doesn't have enough starts for us to really fully know what he is yet. And I think at this point, the fact that you haven't given him a true number one to figure out what he's got in him, right? And then beyond that, the fact that you could take Malik Willis from the Titans, didn't go through OTAs with you, didn't go through mini camp with you, did not know half of your playbook. Love gets injured. Malik Willis enters. In 1 week, Matt LaFleur switched their entire offense. They ran the inverted veer like we were in 1955 and were productive with it. I think the biggest problem for them is there is an identity crisis.
Well, that's bad. That's actually a bad sign.
Yeah,
if you have a quality offensive coordinator and he's helping to support your quarterback.
Well, the biggest problem I think that they have is they should probably be a power run first team like they were when Willis was in there. And once they have to throw, when you get to 3rd and 9 and longer, that's kind of where I think they've struggled. Right? In the red zone, when Love is operating in compressed areas where the check down to Jacobs is available or one of their 4 wide receiver threes is open, that's when he's doing the most damage based on everything that you said before. What's not there are and I'm not sure that they're ever going to find anybody to go do this again, but like, you need these chunk downfield plays that come from Jordy Nelson just beating somebody, Greg Jennings just beating somebody. I think the lack of a one is forcing them and forcing LaFleur in a lot of ways to play a style of offense where they're not really sure what Jordan Love long-term will be. Even though you see flashes of brilliance here, you see down games there, you have good stretches, you have bad stretches. It's tough to actually figure out what he is because you have 2 tight ends in Kraft and Musgrave that are awesome. You have a running back in Jacobs that's awesome. The O-line is better than I think people realize that it is. And you have a bunch of wide receiver 3s and 4s and Reed, who I think is probably a 2 at this point. But there is no alpha. There is no number one that you can basically say 3rd and 9, go get us, a first down.
They think that's what Golden is.
I don't see it. I don't see it. Matthew Golden is not that to me. I understand why they drafted him. Basically at some point you've got to go find a one, but to me he's not a one.
It was a desperation move. This is the thing when you have to draft on need into a position that is weak in a particular year, then you're just compounding errors, right? You're compounding. Their defense isn't good enough to play the way you're talking about. That's the
No.
problem. Is they don't have the defense to play the way you're talking about, and they didn't invest in the defense in the draft. They went golden. They went offensive line.
It's a strange. I think this is a year of transition for Green Bay where if I'm LaFleur, this is what I would do. I would put more on Love's plate, knowing that the surrounding pieces are not as good as they should be in terms of pass catchers, and I would see what happens with it. If he's able to elevate that offense, then good for him. And if he's not, then you know that you have to support him more and maybe even double dip drafting a wide receiver next year or the year after when the classes are much better.
Josh Jacobs is not that dynamic, man. He's not that guy. I mean, he was the RB6 in fantasy last year on volume. The guy's 27 years old, right? Had 300 rush attempts. That's how he got there. 4.4 yards a carry, 36 catches, 16 touchdowns.
Yeah, I mean, it's not
touchdowns. That's how they're going to do it. They're going to have to feed him again, but I don't think he's going to be as efficient this year. I can't see the touchdowns getting to 16. I don't think he's that great of a value this year. He's going the same spot he was in drafts this year as he was last year. He's a year older, and this team is not going to be in as many positions to run the ball, looking at the week-to-week game script that they were last year. So for that reason, I don't love Jacobs this year. I don't love an aging player. His explosiveness rating on Player Profiler was number 12. Not great, but not bad either. There's a lot of tread on that tire, man. We're talking about 300 attempts, 230 attempts, 340 attempts. I mean, he hasn't had a season in 6 seasons in the league with less than 217 rush attempts. So eventually this is going to catch up with Josh Jacobs, and this just isn't, he's not the dynamic playmaker. If you're going to be leaning on a player like Josh Jacobs, who's just a very good grinder back, who's not giving you these big explosive runs, not super active in the passing game, he needs to be part of a larger system, especially with a quality quarterback. He doesn't have that. So running the offense through Josh Jacobs is not a recipe for making the playoffs. Like 9.5 wins with no vig on either side, that's just irrational. That's one of the lines that stood out most to me, where I was like, this is silly.
Well, everyone is trying to find the NFC contender that comes out of the middle pack, right? You've got your established contenders, you've got your Eagles, you've got, certain years the Cowboys. Obviously, Washington last year was the team that made the big jump. But for us, we're trying to figure out who can that team be this year? Who's finally gonna put it all together? Who's gonna have the health? We thought it might be Detroit last year. The defense totally fell apart because of injuries, and they lost to Washington. It is what it is. No one can predict health. I think that team this year could be the Bucs. It could be Tampa Bay.
It very well could be. The Buccaneers, their win total is the same as the Packers. What are we doing? They play in the NFC South. What are we doing? Of course, they're going to win more games than the Packers. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. How are they the same number of 9.5 as Green Bay? It makes no sense. And the funny thing is, Commanders, Rams, also 9.5.
Yeah,
think about it. Which team of those doesn't belong? Yeah, it's the Green Bay Packers. In the NFC, you have the Eagles, you have the Lions, you have the Commanders, and we're hoping the Buccaneers. That's it. Like, there's not a lot of teams to get excited about, but this is the class. Eagles, Lions, Commanders. That is just class. I want to see 3 or 4 games from Tampa before we put them in that echelon.
Yeah,
if Baker is 22 fantasy points per game, Baker. If Tristan Wirfs is healthy and this offensive line is better than it was last year, and Mike Evans is not dust, and Chris Godwin comes back, there's a lot of ifs. Then Bucky Irving, he's ready to take another step forward. This guy is a complete machine in the weight room and working out in the offseason. Their defense has been in transition. If they can find the right pieces to come together and that the defense coalesces, again, the offensive line stays healthy throughout training camp. We don't have a lot of major injuries. Things are trending in the right direction with their wide receivers to start the season in terms of just health and dynamism. These are the things that could fall into place. It's a bunch of things need to fall into place for them to not just look back and go, oh, that was just a weird variance year for Tampa Bay. I need to see a little bit more. But I think they are the fourth best team in the division. I think they're better than the 49ers. They're better than the Packers, that's for sure. So I'm with you. And they're in a soft division.
Yeah.
So that would be an easy over for me, over 9.5. It's interesting. Sometimes fantasy gamers are smarter than the betting public. So if you look at the ADP of like Buccaneers players, you would easily be over on the Buccaneers.
Yeah.
Right. So that's one of those things. And then sometimes we're a little bit behind the gambling public. Like we're a little bit behind the gambling public on like this Rams passing game. A little too bullish.
Yeah.
A little too bullish.
Both of those teams have some pieces that they need to put together. It's pretty clear that the class of the NFC is the Eagles, and then like a half tier down, you've got the Lions and the Commanders. And the Lions, obviously, with multiple linemen that they need to replace, that's a big question. And Hutch coming back off injury, that's another question. Then with these two teams, with the Rams, it's you had a bunch of really young players that played really well cohesively as a unit defensively. Do they get figured out in the same way that Love got figured out last year? Does Stafford stay healthy? What is the relationship between a Nakua and an Adams look like? How explosive is the offense if you're going to try to run more? And then with Tampa, it's basically, hey, Evans is getting up there in age. Godwin's getting up there in age. You drafted Igbuka, who we think is going to be great. You drafted Benjamin Morrison, the DB out of Notre Dame, who is awesome. And if he didn't get injured, he would have easily been a first-round pick. So you're betting a lot with Tampa and with the Rams on health and how these teams mesh from year to year with the pieces that they've added and that they've lost. I think they're the two best that are positioned to make that jump into kind of the Commanders tier from last year. But again, someone's going to do it. More than likely, we're going to see somebody win 11, 12, 13 games that isn't, the Lions, the Commanders, the Eagles. It's just a question of who it's going to be. And, we were hoping for years that it might be the Cowboys, and then they kind of let us down. But yeah, I mean, I think that the Bucs are my favorite, kind of dark horse to bet on this year, just because the division is so easy.
Yes, and that you're right. They made some really smart draft picks. Igbuka was great pick. That's just a great chalk pick. We have aging receivers. We're not going to overthink it. We need receiver. We're going Igbuka. Benjamin Morrison. Hey, what a hack. Whenever you see these guys that are clear first-round talents available in the second round and they're only available because of injury, you just draft them. You just close your eyes and draft them every time. Every time. Once in a while, it doesn't work out because it's like a chronic injury, but just draft them every time. That was a great pick. So they're just making great draft picks, restocking, retooling, addressing like cornerback, the areas of weakness, or we talked about it where areas, units of their team that are aging. When I see that and I see Baker Mayfield sort of just developing into like a true leader of men, right? The blossoming of Baker Mayfield in as the former 101, seeing what he realizes potential. Yeah, I'm with you. I can tell you that there will be no NFC Championship teams coming out of the NFC West. I can tell you that right now. That's not going to happen. It's going to be the Buccaneers, Lions, Commanders, Eagles. I think those are going to be the biggest contenders. Buccaneers, of all of them, have the best win total, the lowest win total, the best value win total on the board. So I think that's an easy one. Though for fantasy, it's tough. It's tough to get behind any of these guys. The fantasy public really likes Buccaneers. I think that sometimes in these situations where when the weapons are all sort of all juiced up, where Bucky Irving is going well ahead of Breece Hall, and you're like, oh man, Bucky Irving's going ahead of Chase Brown. You're like, I don't know, man. In those situations, here's what I do. I just draft a quarterback.
That's
yep. Right? That's the same thing. The same logic applies. Just draft Matthew Stafford.
Yep.
Right? Just draft Matthew Stafford. Just draft Baker Mayfield. And then, again, where are these guys getting drafted? They're barely getting drafted at all in single quarterback. High stakes, the FFPC, they're getting drafted for sure. Yeah. And then 2 QB and superflex leagues are 2 of the best picks. They're 2 of the best picks. That's the move in fantasy football. When you're struggling, you're like, I can't figure out these guys. Their ADPs are just, they're not adding up. They're all too steamed up. The quarterback. Yes, that's what I'm doing, baby.
It's easiest, I think, with
Hey, I want to thank you for being part of this broadcast. If you have any thoughts on it, leave a comment. If you enjoyed it, make sure you leave a like. And if you want to see more shows on the Player Profiler channel, subscribe to it. That's how we know you want more.